Welcome back to the Jonestead. I'm Mary. Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025. And I just wanted to take a few minutes today to talk about financial things to consider when you're going through your financial preparedness. And one thing that's extremely important, and you hear a lot of people that talk about preparedness, is to make sure that you have cash on hand and don't keep all of your cash in the bank. And a lot of people wonder, well, what's wrong with keeping all my cash in the bank? It's safe there, isn't it? Well, one thing to consider is what the banks are doing with your money and where your money actually is. I used to think that when I made a deposit in the bank, they had they had that money set aside for Mary, and so when Mary comes back to get that money, it's going to be there. Well, the United States, our banking system operates on what's called Fractional Reserve Banking or fractionalized banking. And what that is where the banks keep only a fraction of what depositors put in and in the vault, and then the rest of it they loan out. And I was reading this article on a NerdWallet talking about this specifically. It says, to use a classic example, if you deposit $1,000 into a savings account and the bank keeps 10% in reserves, your bank holds onto $100 and lends out $900 to another customer. That customer spends $900 on a car repair, and the auto shop deposits the money. The shop's bank keeps $90 and lends out $180, and so on. Fractional reserve banking allows banks to essentially create money in the economy. Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? Until that money isn't in the bank and something happens where people need to access their cash. And I came across this on the Fred blog, which is the Federal Reserve Economic Data blog. And it said it was posted in 2018, but the stats go to 2020, and I could not find anything more current. It seems the internet's getting a little more difficult to navigate to get really good information. But the point of me showing this to you all is the blog is how much cash do banks keep in the vault. And down here, specifically, it says, we can't give you details about your bank specifically, but we do have statistics for the banking system as a whole. The graph shows that banks hold about $75 billion in their vaults at any moment, which translates to about $230 for each U.S. resident. So why is that important? Well, if there is a run on the bank, or and all of a sudden citizens are running to try and cash out their accounts, the bank's not going to have your money. At the most, it would have the $230 in there. And of course, nowadays with banking, frequently, if you need, say you want to go buy a car or a generator or whatever, and you need $10,000, you need to arrange that ahead of time with the bank so that they can be sure they actually have that money in the bank. The other thing to consider is if there is a bank failure, like we saw with Silicon, the people say, oh, well, that's okay. All of my deposits are insured by the FDIC. And something to consider is the FDIC insurance only covers each account up to $250,000. And I've heard varying reports on how long that can take for depositors to get their money back, because it also depends on what type of investigation is going on with that bank at the time. So the other thing I came across that was extremely important is it had been the percentage requirements for banks to have for cash on hand used to be 10%, and then it was reduced. And I came across this report. This is the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and says, excuse me, as announced on March 15th, 2020, the board reduced reserve requirement ratios to 0% effective March 26, 2020. So they have lowered the requirements for banks as far as the amount they have to keep on hand at cash value. Obviously, if you go to a bank, you can ask them, what do they keep on hand? What are their reserves as far as their financial stability? But this is creating, when we had the bank failures, all this does is allow banks to operate with a lot less stability for their depositing customers. So something very important to keep on hand or keep in mind when you're preparing, maybe set some cash aside in a safe place. Don't keep it all in the bank, or maybe don't, if you are just, I want to deal with the bank, maybe don't keep it all in the same bank. But I do think it's important to know, to understand that when you are dealing with the bank and you're depositing your money, you may or may not be able to get access to it like you think you can. So I hope you find this information helpful, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great day. God bless you.